Time for another episode of Two Big Things, the improvement week version. Last year, when Ohio State had its first bye week of the season, Ryan Day called it an improvement week because it was 3 weeks into the season, and it made no sense to go into a bye week. Barely played any football. Well, here we are again, 12 months later, and it's the same concept. 3 games and then a bye week, and it probably doesn't make a whole lot of sense to take a break when you've only played 3 games of football, but there are things Ohio State does need to spend the next 2 weeks maybe looking into improving, working on before it takes the field against Washington next Saturday. Out in Seattle, and the game's at 3:30 on CBS, 12:30 Eastern time, though. So somehow Ohio State went west and still ended up playing a game at noon. I'm Steven, and that's Stefan. We talk with Ryan Day and the coordinators, Stefan. So we got more people into the mix here. What is something you're interested in? What do you want to know about Ohio State as it goes into its first bye week?
I think the big thing is, trying to figure out what exactly the right guard situation is going to be when they come out of the bye week. Because as we talked about, on Buckeye Talk earlier this week, there is this sense of, is it a rotation at right guard or is it not a rotation? Because it's not like Tegra Shabola and Ethan Owenyawa are splitting the reps. It's more like Tegra Shabola is handling most of the reps, and every now and then we see Ethan Owenyawa get a drive or two. And the game against Ohio was not a clean game for Tegra Shabola, right? There were a couple penalties there, and it led to Ethan Owenyawa getting some snaps. But in the biggest moments, they have turned to Tegra Shabola. And is that performance against Ohio going to change anything? Will we see Ethan Owenyawa featured more? Will it become more of a rotation? Can Ethan Owenyawa become the number one guy? Or is Tegra Shabola just going to be the guy there, and that's who they're going to stick with going forward? It's kind of a thing that we've been talking about throughout the offseason of how they're going to handle rotating on the offensive line, and it specifically became a focus on right guard when we saw that Austin Saraville is going to be the left tackle and Ethan Owenyawa is going to factor in on the right side. And with Philip Daniels kind of securing his spot at right tackle, the only place left to answer now is right guard. And as you go into a bye week and you have 3 weeks of film to kind of look back on before you start the Big Ten schedule, where do you want to go with that? Do you want to stick with Tegra? Do you want to rotate? Do you want to give Ethan Owenyawa more reps? How do you want to handle that? That's going to be an interesting thing, whether it be for Brian Harline or for Ryan Day to talk about.
Do you think that rotation, or in quotes, rotation, we talked about in the offseason the idea of rotating from a place of strength. Do you think right now that rotation is from a place of strength, or do you think it's because they don't know who the best guy is yet? Integra is the guy who started last year, so in order to get through the first 3 games, that's who got the bulk of the snaps.
Yeah, it's interesting because when we've seen Tegra come out, the Ohio game was mistakes that he made. In Texas game, it kind of felt like it was almost just to give him a breather. So, like when Ethan Owenyawa's come in, it has been at times because of weakness, but also at the same time when Ethan's come in, he's played well and they've still taken him out. So that would maybe suggest it's from a place of strength. So I think we've almost seen it on both ends. I mean, I'd like to believe the rotation is out of a place of strength because Tegra Shabola played a big role in this team winning a national championship last year, and Ethan Owenyawa was one of their big transfer portal additions. So I'd probably still lean towards a place of strength, but we have seen kind of both ends of it, throughout the first 3 games here.
I think they got to figure that out, and obviously they got to use 2 games to do so. Now they got 2 weeks to really figure that out. Brandon Ennis has 5 catches for 37 yards on 6 targets this year. He had 2 targets against Texas, and then I think he had 3 against Ohio. Against Grambling. He had 3 targets against Texas, I believe, and 3 targets against Grambling. Did not have a target against Ohio. I don't know what to do with that information because the slot receiver position during the Ryan Day era has been a fundamental part of this offense. Paris Campbell in 2018 had 90 catches, which broke David Boston's record for most catches in a single season by an Ohio State receiver. In 2020, the position was so vital that Garrett Wilson moved from X to slot so they could maximize it. 2019, KJ Hill, they were rotating all the other spots at receiver. KJ Hill didn't come off of the field. 2021, Jackson Smith-Njigba breaks Paris Campbell's record and has 95 catches for the most catches in Ohio State history in a single season by a receiver. Emeka Buka steps into that role. He's a 70-plus guy in 2022. 2023, the only reason he didn't have at least 70 catches is because he was hurt for most of the year. And then he has 81 catches last year as the slot guy. We felt like Brandon Ennis would just plop in and, okay, what's the touches situation going to look like? You got 2 first-round guys on the outside, but the slot receiver position has been so vital in this offense. Where does he fit into that? Maybe he's not number one, but could he have 60 catches this year? I don't think that's off the table, and I still don't think it's off the table. Jackson Smith-Njigba in 2021 did not have a catch in his first game as a starter against Minnesota, and then he had like 10 catches the next week, and he had 95 catches for the rest of the season, right? So anything is possible. But I don't know if I factored in the idea of the slot receiver maybe not getting the same amount of touches that we've seen in the past, and maybe not being as fundamental in a world where you're moving JJ all around, right? So he's got 20 catches. Carnell's got 12 catches. Brandon Ennis is still third in catches, but he only has 37 yards, while Will Kazmarek has 4 for 67. Max Clare has 4 for 48. Jelani Thurman has 4 for 48. CJ Donaldson's been a part of the pass game with 3 for 22. So yes, we've talked about Brandon Ennis from a punt returner situation, but I don't know if the slot receiver position is or isn't being maximized right now for a team who, as you talked about, is playing a lot more 12 personnel than maybe they have ever played. And do we need to recalibrate what production looks like for Brandon Ennis in 2025? Or I don't know, do we get to a point this year where Brandon Ennis does have some breakout games because teams are just loading up on JJ and Carnell? But through 3 games, I'm not sure if I could have predicted that the starting slot receiver at Ohio State would only have 5 catches and he would have a game when he didn't have a catch, because I can't remember the last time a slot receiver had a game where he didn't have at least 1 catch.
Yeah, it's interesting because when you watch kind of back some of that Ohio game, you see that there are moments where Ennis is open, right? Like it's not
Yep.
like he's not getting open, and it's either Julian Sand misses him or the ball's already to Jeremiah or Carnell, and it's maybe a result of just the weapons that are around him. I am very interested to see where Brandon Ennis's role goes with this team moving forward, because he's obviously an important piece to what they do and they trust him, right? They trusted him in big moments last season in a national title game and a
Yeah.
win at Penn State. So it's obvious that they trust Brandon Ennis, and he is still going to be this team's starting slot receiver. There's no denying anything like that. But yeah, how do you get the ball to him more often? Because I think he's a guy who's a weapon when the ball is in his hands. And do you maybe have to make more of a concerted effort to get the ball to him? I don't know. We'll see that kind of unfold as this Big Ten slate begins and rolls around. But it has been odd. I mean, I thought he was going to be second only to Jeremiah Smith in
Yeah.
receptions for this team, just because of what that slot receiver role has done for Ohio State. But maybe part of this is a result of the depth that they have at tight end, the way Keenan Allen has developed that position, and maybe what they feel like is more of a strength when you have a guy like Max Clear who can be a tight end, but also a de facto slot for you too. Like he's very versatile in the ways that you can use him, and you can call it 12 personnel because Max Clare is on the field. But if he's lining up more like a slot receiver, then what's the difference? So that's maybe another thing we didn't take into account is just how deep this tight end room is and the ways that Ohio State would look to use it compared to years past.
The defense is good, which is why we don't have any questions about it. It's going to be interesting talking to Matt Patricia today and going, hey, defense, good, right? And him doing his best grumble, 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 Bill Belichick impression, grumble, 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 Bill Belichick impression. But also, I'm very happy to be here. I love it here. Wow. On offense, it's a lot of weapons, and I think we're still trying to figure out how they're going to best deploy them week in and week out. And I think Ohio State's still trying to figure that out, which is why we saw what we saw in the first half against OU, despite them winning that game 37-9. 2 weeks until Ohio State plays another football game, but we'll be talking with Ryan Day and the coordinators today. So get the text 614-350-3315, 2-week free trial, $3.99 after that. Though I would wait, actually, I would save it. No, actually, you can get it because you get bye-week content for a week for free, and then you get the Washington game for free. So listen, I always say there's not a bad time to sign up for the text. I'm just telling you why right now is a good time to sign up for the text. Those are our 2 big things as Ohio State heads into its improvement week, its first bye week of the season as the number 1 team with a 3-0 record. Big Ten play right around the corner. That's Stefan. I'm Steven. Go listen to Buckeye Talk wherever you find podcasts. We'll catch you guys later.